Well,
But yeah, I
I'm
mean,
gonna go. No,
there's there's been a lot of great stuff that like I don't need to talk about at length that's come out this year, but like there's a million different avenues you could go, whether it's rap music or music in general. I mean, I could tell you about how great the Quelle Chris record is, or I could tell you how great the you know the Five Finger Posse record is. I could tell you how great the Run the Jewels is, or I could tell you how great the Pop Smoke was. Like it just any avenue that you pick this year in
oh,
rap
you mean the
music.
Pop Smoke album that just came out, right, with the great Virgil cover art?
Yeah, I did not mean that one. With every song was sounded like it should have been on the Massacre. Um,
Shout out to 50 Cent as the A&R on that shit.
God,
Good
fuck
work
you,
with.
50. And it wasn't even, that's the thing. Pop Smoke is so charismatic and like has such a presence that the record wasn't bad. It just like wasn't distinct. It was still distinctive in a small sense, but it just felt like a 50 Cent assembled record. Like you could feel it, and you were just like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like there were songs there that make sense. There are songs there that make no sense. Like he had talked about, Pop Smoke had talked about in interviews, like, "Oh, I'm experimenting with some R&B stuff. Like I want to make more than just like drill songs." But at the same time, if a Pop Smoke album came out when he was still living, like it would have been a balance of the two. It wouldn't have just been an entire R&B Pop Smoke album with like one drill song, and the one drill song was by far the best song on the whole shit.
I only gave it a cursory listen. I didn't listen to all of the tracks on it. I would say that this is what you get what you pay for. Like fifth at his, I don't want to call him fifth. That's really stupid. 50 at his height was never in control of all of his music anyway. The more
Hmm.
control he got over his music, like was the less commercially successful he got, and there was a reason for that. Like he was always best at playing a character with somebody else constructing the scene for him, somebody else writing his lines a lot of the time. And musically, his best time was around the Massacre. So, like commercially, I would say. So, what else did you expect him to come out with? Like, obviously, there were superficial similarities between Pop Smoke and 50. So he just kind of fit him into the template that he knew best. Like,
It
it's not
really, it
you were really
really.
expecting 50 Cent to like know what was popping in 2020.
I mean, but I don't even. It's just like every song was essentially a ballad, and it's like I know that he wanted to prove his versatility, Pop Smoke, that is, but I just don't. His first two mixtapes were just about like were that the reason why this New York version of drill is popular, and those are essential mixtapes. I mean, the first mixtape I think is going to be the defining New York drill statement. It's such a great tape. It's 7 tracks. It's like just the perfect length. And I just feel like if his actual like commercial debut record wouldn't have sounded like this, obviously. But hey, can't control what you can't control. It happened. It was unfortunate. It wasn't a bad record. It just like irritated me. Um, but
So,
yeah, but like I was saying earlier, million great albums came out this year. Like, and it doesn't, whether you're talking about.
well, my idea was to lightning round the chart real quick, and then like anything we wanted to stop and extrapolate on, we could. Otherwise, it's just gonna give like quick takes on shit.
Yeah, quick, sure,
Um,
quick, are great.
yeah, so I got the chart up. I'm not filtering it by anything. Uh, just to make sure, number 3 or number 1?
Number 3, I'm guessing you mean Charlie.
I wasn't trying to fucking spoil it for
I
the
know, I
listener.
know. Well, yes, number 3 is my number one. I was
We'll wait to talk about Charlie then, because I was going
sure.
to talk about our number ones at the end. Anyway. RTJ4, we talked about at length previously on an episode. I have not really listened to it much since that episode. I still maintain that Walking in the Snow is one of the best songs all year. Sometimes actually, that's a lie. Sometimes I do listen to it before work when I need something to kick my ass. I listen to the first couple tracks. Yankee and the Brave has really grown on me. Really good song. Alfredo, I want to talk about at length a little bit more later because I wanted to kind of go into more of an Alchemist thing. So I will get back to that. Purple Moonlight Pages. We're actually planning on doing an episode with our YM user Koza 12 about this in the future, so I don't want to go too in depth on it. But this is a really fucking good album that I hope does not get forgotten because it was getting Album of the Year talk when it came out, and then fucking pandemic happened, and then kind of just fell behind. And it's so like people wanted more paranoid music, more like angry music.
Mhm.
Pandemic happened, execution by the state of George Floyd happened, all
Right.
this shit. So I'm not to say there aren't angry political elements to this album, but it's overall a much more it takes a much more relaxed, for lack of a better term, zen approach to things.
You think this feels like a Diggable Planets record in 2020?
I mean, I feel like it feels like a Freestyle Fellowship Good Life record in 2020 because that's directly what he's paying homage to, and like he's got like Mike Ladd on there directly from that scene. I don't know if he has Micah 9 on there. No, just Mike Ladd and Open Mike Eagle. It does have kind of the digital Diggable. I never have been able to pronounce that one. And I had to say that in real life. It has that feel to it too. Maybe a little. What was the other band I was going to reference here? It wasn't Tribe Called Quest. I can't believe I just called them a band. But I think Laundry is great because he actually does a song about folding clothes, and it works. And he makes Chance the Rapper reference.
He was like ready to annihilate the J. Cole Chance the Rapper like wave with that song.
Well, I mean, he doesn't mention Cole in the song. He mentions Chance in a song about folding clothes. He makes the most stereotypical "you make music for white people" song ever, and it's fucking great. It's clever. It's funny. The beats on this are by the Jefferson Park Boys, which is Kenny Siegel, Mike Parvizi, and I forget the third guy. Mr. Carmack. Kenny Siegel's done a lot of work with Milo, Rap for Rory in the past, and their chemistry just keeps getting better. It's really relaxed. This is probably their most outright jazzy. They kept getting jazzier. Like they started working together on So the Flies Don't Come, and it's basically been a progression from like the Brain Feedery, which was jazzy, it was new jazz, kind of filtered like that sort of thing, kind of filtered through electronics, Brain Feeder style on Toothpaste Suburb, which was Riley Lake. But so the Flies Don't Come kind of progressed that approach. And everyone since that he's done with Kenny Siegel, every project has gotten progressively more jazzy. And this is just outright freeform, sort of just, it feels like a very outdoor album. It feels like something that it feels bad to listen to inside on headphones. And if you listen to it in your car, you gotta have your windows down. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's one of his best projects. It's a great album. I don't spin it that much, but it's one that is, undeniably great, and I really enjoyed it. The album right next to it is the Yves Tumor record, which is actually in my top 10, as well, which had a higher rating closer to when it came out. I think it hasn't had like a backlash, but I think just people are like, well, this is good, but I don't think it's great. And I don't know, man. This is still a really excellent record. And freaking Kerosene is incredible. Medicine Burn's incredible. Gospel for a New Century is incredible. Like, the last few tracks, like the whole thing to me is like I said this when I listened to it. I listened to it probably about like a month or so after it came out, and my first thought was like, this is what Gambino was trying to do on his album, but good. And I really feel like this is the ideal version of like Childish Gambino's last two records. Even though Awaken My Love was a cool album, like this is just a better version of that stuff. It's different, obviously. It's not aping like Parliament Funkadelic, but it has like that psychedelic soul, like neo-psych, funk rock aspect to it. And it's a great album. Great record. I think it's a good place to start with him, actually. It's probably his most accessible record. And I think it's my favorite of his. So yeah, he's great, and this album's great.
Can't speak to it, haven't heard it, should hear it. Last time you mentioned it, said I would hear it. Haven't heard it since then.
We were trying to figure out if it was Yves or Yves.
Right. I was not good at pronouncing that man's name. But now we get into the music for white people section, and Mac Miller circles. Okay. Discussion to have about this album. Do we think it's his best album? Is it soon enough to make that decision? And is it his best album? And are people saying it's his best album just because it's posthumous?
I think the second part is true. I think the first part is not true because Faces is a classic.
Right, but they're so different. He was at such different places in his life. I feel like they could be equal in different ways. If you get what I'm saying, it's like I feel like they're doing completely different things. And like, I mean, I have Faces at a 10. It took me a while to get to that 10 because I used to think Faces was overstuffed. Like there were parts about it I didn't like, but the parts about it I didn't like, when I listened to it fresh, it's like actually this is the best possible use of Mike Jones. actually, there's a reason for Rick Ross to be here. Actually, Absol didn't show up for that song.
Yeah, it's yeah, Faces is a classic, and this album is really good. Like, you know, it's obviously people are going to look at it in a certain way because it's posthumous, but I know we talked about it in our like early year roundup, but this is his like it's basically a neo soul and like a, you know, all R&B record, and he it's such an unlikely record from Mac Miller compared to what you would hear 4 or 5 years ago from him, but it's really sad and really good. And I don't listen to it. Like, I'm gonna keep saying I don't listen to it much, but like you kind of can't. Um, it's a downer. It's a good downer, but it's a downer. Um,
Would it be a downer if he didn't die?
yeah, because I think swimming was a downer.
Yeah, but this is supposed to be completing the circle. And I feel like there is more optimism on here than there was on swimming. I don't know if I'm superimposing my own narrative on it, but I feel like there are more optimistic moments on this, even though like the way he approaches it, the way he sings on it, and like Good News, which is one of the best songs of the year, is, you know, it's has a happy title, but obviously the song itself is very, very far from optimistic. Like the title talks about like you wanted to essentially the chorus I'm saying is like you wanted to hear a happy song. That's all you people ever want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, again, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's his best album. I'd say Faces is probably his best. I also have a real special place for the second Larry Fisherman tape, which is a beat tape that very obscure, but I think it was a real testament to how he honed his craft as a producer. And also Stolen Youth, if you can count it as a Mac Miller album, Stolen Youth with Vince Staples, incredible fucking album.
Yeah, that's a really good. I mean, most of his projects are good now. I feel like people have come around outside of like the really, really early stuff. He's, you know, his legacy is definitely solidified, and you know, it's a real shame. We, of course, like it's terrible that these are the circumstances that gave us one of his best albums. Um, yeah, the other ones we've already, I mean, we've talked about how much we like the Strokes album, and the Phoebe Bridgers album's good, and Denzel's album
Shout
was
out on the
good.
Phoebe Bridgers album, real quick, to the last track on there, which might be my favorite song of the year. I Know the End. Everybody, the thing about it is, if you look on the fucking YouTube page on the comments thread, everybody talks about how it's got big Sufjan energy, I guess,
Hmm.
which is I guess because Sufjan Stevens sings backing vocals on it, which I didn't even fucking notice. It actually sounds to me like Road to Joy by Bright Eyes a little bit because it kind of covers the same ground. It has a very the world is ending feeling, which it's called This Is the End. It's the most emphatic way I can think of to end your album. And also I think that it makes more sense to say it has big Bright Eyes energy considering who she just did an album with. So, and he also guests earlier on the album. So, but that song is remarkable. And when you listen to it, I feel like it's very much the anthem for 2020, not just because it's apocalyptic, but because obviously she recorded this before all of the truly apocalyptic shit happened, but it just has that atmosphere about it. The whole album is very good. The singles off of it, Kyoto and I forget what the other, Garden Song, but especially Kyoto are really fucking good. Kyoto kind of reminds me of Rilo Kiley a little bit. It's really catchy. It's probably her poppiest song that I've heard. Um, I'm not as high on this album aside from those as a lot of people, but those highlights are some of the best music of the year. For next thing I run into on the list, well, I'm sure you probably want to talk about the Against All Logic real quick.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's the same thing. That, like, I mean, Nicholas Starr just dropped an album on Friday. That's also great. It's very ambient, very different from this album.
Shout out to Diction, who hates the ambient Nicholas Jar album. He likes the
Well,
Against All Logic stuff, though.
yeah, I guess because the Against All Logic stuff is more dance floor ready. I know Diction's a big supporter of like deep house and that sort of thing. You know, outsider house, etc. Like he's definitely more of a supporter of that. I mean, I've talked with Diction about like some of the mid to late 2010s like deep house stuff that's come out. So I know he's a appreciator of that. Um, yeah, Nicholas Jar to me is one of the best in electronic music working today, if not the best. Like he's just so consistent. Everything he puts out is really good. Um, And his new one is great. I've only heard it once, but it was great. And the Against All Logic tape is great and not as good as the first one, but well worth your time. Very has like a techno vibe, gets into like a little bit of industrial stuff in there. Nothing crazy, like nothing too abrasive, but definitely a little bit more left field than his first Against All Logic you know, album. And yeah, that's electronic music this year. Like that's a highlight for me for sure. There's a lot of great stuff in just this realm of the chart. The Material Girl record, Tangram, which is like a really cool like sound collage album, which I think you should listen to.
I think I downloaded it. I don't know if I cataloged it, but I'm pretty sure I downloaded it on the recommendation of somebody from the chat. So it sounds it sounds like something Horse would have recommended. So
it's definitely, yeah. I feel like Horse probably liked it. I have no idea if he liked it or not, but it's definitely something he would like. That's good. I mean, just going down, like,
we should probably talk about the new Mad Villainy. Like, we already talked about the new Equimini a few weeks ago with Rebirth. The new Mad Villainy, Unlocked, Denzel Curry and Kenny Beats.
Yeah, I remember in our What Are We Listening To from this year, we talked about that and how annoying people were about that. Ugh. Great album. Great album. Denzel's really, I mean, what I can't say anything else about Denzel. He's great. His records are really good. Not much else.
I wanted to bring this up because I have this one coworker who has, let's say his musical tastes run to where me and this older coworker were talking about shit, and this older coworker was very much like, oh, these kids and their dumb drill music. He called the music that he calls drill artists like Lil Doo-Doo. He calls them all Lil Doo-Doo and Lil Butt Crack. So that's how he feels about it. And he mentioned DJ Premier, and this other coworker said, oh, you mean like DJ Khaled? And then this guy just got up and walked away. You've never seen someone look so disgusted. So the other coworker, the one who said the thing about DJ Khaled, he very much listens to pretty much nothing but trash. But I played him the Denzel song. I played him Diet and whatever he did. Yeah, which I think he did the color show version for, and he fucked with it. So the thing about this album is I think it has the potential to really cross Denzel over even more. And it's probably his most like I think this and the Blood In Blood Out mix are both equally uncompromising. So I'm really impressed with it. I still spin it occasionally because it's so quick and easy to spin. Like I think I feel like that's where the Mad Villain comparison came from more than anything, because the beats sound nothing like Mad Villain. Fucking Denzel raps nothing like Doom, but it has that compact, repeatable quality to it. So I think that's where that comes from. Any other comparisons are just stupid. But it's great. I have it at a 9. I would stick with it being at a 9. And it's not something I spin all day, every day, but it's very easy to spin like during your day.
Right, because it's so compact and it gets in and out quickly.
And I think Kenny's beats have such personality to them that as a producer, like it's funny to say this, that you instantly recognize it's him, because the first project of his I heard was Vince Staples' FM, and I thought that was a bunch of different producers. So
right, and
I instantly recognized that it was him.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, his tag is so obvious, but you also have to,
I don't know if he uses tag on that one though. But either way,
I'm saying I don't think he does either, and that's what I'm saying is when he doesn't use the tag, people rag on Kenny Beats for like, all his beats are the same or whatever, or, whatever the criticism is this week, but he's definitely a lot more distinctive than people give him credit for.
The Vince Staples project is definitely a testament to that, because it's FM. It's supposed to sound like the radio, and all those songs, like, I felt like sounded distinctive from each other. Like sometimes to a fault. Like I didn't want to hear the fucking Little Tyga songs on that shit. I'm never listening to them again. The fact that I was able to put them on there was still cool. So like it still fit the theme very well. So I don't get that.
No, 100.
It sounds nothing like the Gweedo tape, which sounds nothing like the Rico Nasty tape.
Right, which sounds nothing like the Freddie Gibbs tape, like, just in general.
You probably have something to say about the Weeknd.
Yeah,
I listened to it.
The Weeknd album it's still in my very, very highly up on my list. Loved it then, love it now. Don't spin it quite as much now as I did then, just because there's a lot more out now. It came out pretty early in the year, but his second best project could, if someone said it was his best, I wouldn't disagree. Great record. Basically sounds like music to feel dead inside to while watching Uncut Gems and Blade Runner spliced together. Um, to me, that's great. So I'm into it. Great record, one of his best. I mean, just some other stuff is very high on my list that I know you haven't listened to. We already talked about, like the Young Lean record's really great. I think it's his best. You've
I
got
downloaded the Bladey record though. Is that how you pronounce
oh
it?
the Blade record, the new one.
Blade. So you don't pronounce the other E.
You do not pronounce the other E, although it's going to be hilarious when we do our Drain Gang episode, and you might forget that.
No, but
um,
I downloaded that album. I downloaded a White Armor tape, and I downloaded a Gun or whoever beat tape. I found 2 obscure beat tapes and the new Blade album, and I'm gonna try and do this Drain Gang shit.
yeah,
So
well, White Armor is like the mastermind behind like that whole sound. Good is he was behind Young Lean. He does stuff with Drain Gang too, just because they're so
well, he
closely.
did the Kyoto beat, so I already am interested because Kyoto
Oh
is
yeah, no,
a song I love.
good. Both White Armor and Good both are incredible at, like, they devised the whole soundscape for what like that type of cloud rap sounds like that. From the whole Swedish cloud rap vibe, like that whole wave is their sound. Like they're the most important members of like Drain Gang or Sad Boys or anything like that. So, um, but yeah, I guess to your point, the Blade record that just came out is really great, and it sounds like I mean, like I said, if you're into, it's an interesting entry point for you because it's very skeletal and it's like an ambient pop record. It's not like it's a very like low key pop record. It doesn't sound like his discog is pretty varied. So you have like his more like trap poppier records. You have like his straight up like cloudy records. You have like his Tread album, like Working on Dying. So it his discography is pretty varied, but this album is like a continuation of Exeter, which was his mixtape earlier this year. That was pretty skeletal. Um, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. But yeah, that's really great. Um,
It's going to be weird for the next couple months because I'm going to be listening to a lot of Drain Gang, a lot of Charles Hamilton for that project, and a lot of what we're listening to for our upcoming Halloween episode. So that's going to be a really weird mix. So
you're gonna be well. Here's the thing. In my experience with getting, because I listened to Blade 2 years ago. I listened to Ever Since 2 years ago, which is now one of my favorite records in cloud rap records. Period. But I listened to that like 2 years ago, and I was like, this is really good. And then I never listened to the rest of his discography. But then I listened to Red Light, and I liked it. And that was like in 2018, I think. But I didn't listen to the rest of his discography until this year for whatever reason. And I think once it like you either like it or you don't. Like the vocals are gonna be either abrasive for you or you're gonna get into it. And I feel like with all of their stuff, you either it's just to me it's just some shit that you either fuck with or you don't fuck with. Like there's not much of a in between of it where if you like one project by them, you're probably gonna like the majority of their output just because it's a similar aesthetic and
we'll
like
see.
sound. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm
I mean,
excited.
I'm coming into this with an open mind. I'm willing to give up all my preconceived notions about Young Lean. Clearly, he's shown that he's not just a fly-by-night culture vulture, which I thought at first. And at the very least, he'll always have Kyoto for me. Like, that's the song that I just kept coming back to that eventually led me. And, of course, everybody being into Drain Gang, like everybody else that I respect, literally everybody else, with the exception of Diction, whose opinion I respect, being really into this. Because I don't think Diction's a Drain Gang fan. Prove me
No, I
wrong,
don't. I don't
Diction.
think
Prove
he's.
me
I don't think
wrong.
he's listened to any of the thing with them is like, if you listen to, and I know you haven't, so I'm trying to, because I've gotten into a lot of this stuff this year. Like, if you listen to a lot of, and it's not just them. There's a million different influential artists from the 2010s that have impacted like what you know like Gen Z is making now in terms of music. But if you listen to like their stuff, and then you listen to like artists that are sort of kind of blowing up in the SoundCloud underground, you can be like, oh, I can hear the connection, or you're like, oh, I can, you know, it's like a hybrid of them, Chief Keef, Cardi, Young Thug, Black Cray, Lil B. I mean, all of it's really back to Lil B, but like Lil B, it's a lot of different artists that have impacted like underground and mainstream in a lot of different ways. And so Dranking themselves have grown more and more popular on the internet in the last like 2 years or so because I think people have gone back and seen their influence. So
since you mentioned him, real quick, shout out to all the Lil B material this year. It's been progressively getting better. I really like the chop and screw stuff. I think I talked about this on our previous What We're Listening To episode. Not a good follow on Twitter. Unfollow the Bass God on Twitter. Don't encourage him. Same thing as Kanye. Don't encourage this shit.
I agree.
So just putting that out there. I have no problem with the 100-track mixtapes, but just don't platform or encourage or signal boost Lil B's dumb behavior. It is not funny anymore. So, just don't.
Yeah, I will say,
reasons.
In my conclusion of Lil B influenced music, and also just in my general conclusion of like what's really I've been listening to a ton this year, which is something very much not in your lane, but anything RCB, which I'm going to do an RCB podcast with, shout out to RYM user 2_, whose YouTube channel is 108 mics, not that 108 mics, but it's another 108 mics. And I'm excited to do this episode with him because we're both big fans. All of High C's material this year has been euphoric and amazing, and some of their most melodic stuff's come out this year. It's cool to see them like I'm now like very much a part of like their cult following. I really had no idea who they were or what any of them were until about like 6 months ago, but really glad that I've gotten into their music. High C's Pretty Demon Rockstar's EP has been on repeat lately. Ball Out's one of my favorite songs of the year. It's just like pure euphoria in like a pop rap song. So yeah, their stuff it's hard to explain like if you haven't listened to it, but it's some of the most fun music and some of the most fun I've had listening to music all year. So they're going to be very prolific and continue to drop things, and I can't wait to listen to them. So that's kind of, I feel like out of all of the, quote unquote, like SoundCloud rap, if you want to label it that, from this year in the underground, they've stood out among the top of the heap because there's a shit ton of it. And I discover like a new artist every week just via, either RYM or just offshoots of other shit I already listened to. So it's crazy how much music is like, how wild like music is, like listening to some of this stuff, like anything Space Ghost Perp inspired, I'm just like, how does this music even exist? Like, it's a very interesting, I can't contextualize as well as someone like maybe a Look at Ghost could do, but it's really, if you're down for the aesthetic on a lot of this stuff, I mean, stuff RCB sounds nothing like any of the dark trap that like Space Ghost Perp inspired, but in general, a lot of this stuff is like really cool, but also if you found it like zany or annoying, I can completely agree with that.
I will eventually get to it. There's just so much. I hate to.
There's so much
cliche that everybody says on RYM, but there's just way too much good music to get to. And I'm not saying I'll like it. I'm not saying I'll hate it. I mean, I would hate to hate it because that would just reinforce the cranky old head stereotype. I mean, somebody called me a boomer about a month and a half ago, and that still hurts. But so you plugged your crew that I'm not into. I'm going to plug the crew that I like that you're not into, Wrecking Crew, who are affiliated with Backwoods. Loosely, but they do a lot of work on each other's projects. They put out a bunch of good shit this year. Probably my favorite producer this year has been Small Pro. Put out 4 amazing beat tapes, each one different than the last. Shout out to Philly, of course. Small Pro's beat tapes all use the word John in them, which makes no fucking sense unless you've been around the Philadelphia area. They kind of explain it in Creed, but I'll put it this way. When I first went to my first semester, I went to Temple, and I had to ask directions for somewhere. And somebody told me that I had to go up to the left, make a turn at the John, and then you're going to see the Big John, and then not the Little John, but the Big John. And then once you see that John, there's going to be this like other John that you see, and that's the John you got to go into. And then I went into class, and somebody was talking about their side John, which is the chick they're fucking that's not their girlfriend.
Right.
And that day that I learned that John means literally infinite amount of things. It can mean literally anything at any moment.
Exactly.
I did not find out where I was going, by the way. I had to ask directions 3 more times. But that same day, somebody tried to sell... The guy who gave me directions, by the way, tried to sell me morphine afterwards. So, Temple.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start walking around calling everything John.
Don't do that. You're not going to blend. You're not going to blend very well. Like, feel out the situation.
I'm gonna indoctrinate myself into culture that way. Now that I am a Philadelphia resident TM.
I don't know how far outside the city John travels. So I don't know if your suburb particularly. We'll see. But Small Pro, 4 beat tapes. A John Supreme, speaking of John, is the most recent of them. Has the Breonna Taylor charity single on it. I believe. I don't know if it's still all the I know all the proceeds from that specific single. There was a T-shirt that went with it. Go towards the legal defense fund to get her killer convicted because her killer is still walking free. So I'm going to signal boost that every chance that I get. The beat tape itself is still excellent, regardless of that. 3 other ones, You Can't Trap My Mind, which is a little bit more like kind of playing off trap tropes, I guess, based on the title. But really, everything he does just has some of the best, most creative drums you'll hear. There was, I'm not calling the titles off the top of my head, but there was one that was spacier than the others. Everything I had, no lower than an 8, somewhere in the 9 range. He's just infinitely creative. And another evidence of his creativity was a project he did with Curly Castro called BLUu Edwards, which is more of a battle rap album. And some of the most creative instrumentals I've heard all year. Just the content. And also, as far as battle rap goes, I don't want you give the wrong impression here. It's very nerdy battle rap. The second track has a chorus about save the cheerleader, save the world, which I believe references a certain terrible television show that I did not watch.
Yeah, it's Heroes.
I know, it's Heroes. But I only remember that from the commercials. But yeah, there's that sort of album where it's like there are dorky references but they're delivered in a really hard sort of way with great delivery over weird beats that also manage to knock. And great features. The Young Man feature on there, the Young Man, I believe, is some relation to Paul Barman. I'm unclear on the connection. Has a great fucking verse. Billy Woods closes the album with a great verse. It's a lot of fun. Castro, but it's probably going to get overshadowed by, in my top 5, I didn't actually order a list like you did. I have a number 1, and I have a rough order. But if I had a top 5, the Shrapknel album would be in there. And I think I talked about that at length on the previous what we're listening to episode, so I won't go too deep into it. It's Curly Castro and Prem Rock with Elucid on the beats, and that's the Backwoods connection, and it's just super dense. It's like, I believe I described Homeboy Sandman and Aesop Rock did projects together. I said it was Run the Jewels for real rap nerds. It's kind of like Run the Jewels for real rap nerds who happen to live in the fucking in the tri-state area. You happen to have to live in this specific area to really appreciate this album.
Right.
But specifying it that specifically, that's a great sentence, is a little like people in this area who, like, I know Kid Geek's going to love this. I'm going to bring it back to The Sopranos. He loved when we talked about The Sopranos last week. But there were people in the area who were like, oh, man, you couldn't appreciate The Sopranos unless you live in Jersey and you were right by where they filmed the scenes in the Bing, unless you drove by Satriale's every day. Like, so I feel like coming up with, like, oh, if you don't live around this area, you can't really, truly appreciate this is kind of a cop-out. I think it gives you a deeper appreciation, but you should, if you just really like weird fucking rap albums that are about a lot of things, you would like this album. And it can be kind of off-putting because it's a rap album where they're rapping at you a lot with a lot of density, but I don't want to call it super lyrical miracle rap because there's a certain insularity to that where it's very self-satisfied, where it's like you're kind of jerking off with the thesaurus. Like, I always think about when Cannabis had a battle rap and he got beat, but he's like, nah, I still want to spit my bars. And he brought out like sheets of paper and he still read the bars that he wrote that he was going to spit in a battle rap.
Oh God.
That's like the epitome of super lyrical miracle to me. It's like, nah, I don't care what's going on around me. I wrote sheets of paper of fucking thesaurus term paper bars, and I'm gonna spit those damn bars. Like, there is like a purpose to this music, and it fits the weirdness of Elucid's instrumentals, and it's really a piece of everything else they put out. This whole scene has put out this year, including my number one record, which I'm not going to give away. I'm not going to spoil it like you spoiled your number one. Although, if you listen to the show, you can probably fucking guess what it is.
I mean, my number one is pretty out there. I mean, it's still, it's the 5-star album that I have from this
I
year.
meant you gave it away. You literally said what it was.
Oh no, I know what you meant. I just meant like I've said it time and again on this, so it's not really a secret. I don't think. Yeah.
I don't know. This is really false suspense, but I'm figuring we got to hook the people. So.
Oh no, I mean,
yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else that they put out on Wrecking Crew this year. Raheem's Lament was a label sampler that they put out, which is a label sampler. It's everyone on the label, exclusives. It's really cool. It's not the best thing that any of them put out, but it's a fun little mix of everybody on there. You get like stuff you're in. I think there's a Billy Woods verse on there, but I'm not certain. So it's stuff from outside the label too. And Zilla Rocca put out 2 little EPs with Ray West. One's a remix job. They're very, probably more regionally specific even than I said about the Shrapknel album, because Zilla does have a very uniquely flavor to his thing. So I feel like that actually kind of has a deeper significance to people who are in the area. But I feel still that even if you're not from this area, the music is still good enough that it can appeal to you, even if you don't get the regional touchstones. Sort of like, it probably means more to you if you're from Buffalo that Griselda got big. They're probably saying shit that resonates on a level that other people don't understand, but the Griselda music is still good enough that you don't have to be from Buffalo to enjoy it.
Exactly. And, I guess my biggest takeaway from this discussion is I should walk around and be like, hey, you don't know how to appreciate the Wrecking Crew, eh?
You forgot to say John.
I forgot to, God damn it. Well, I was doing my
I don't know why you were doing like the fucking Jersey Mook voice. Doing the Jersey Mook voice in Philly is probably a good way to get beaten up.
Oh, hey, you were. I was following your lead.
Making fun of Jersey people in the Sopranos thing. I wasn't trying to do a Philly thing.
No, and what I was doing was I was trying to connect the Mook voice to this very regional Wrecking Crew discussion.
No, I understand what you were doing. Is NYC Gweedo voice still active on Twitter?
Oh, he came back. It was a glorious thing. He came back. So he's been tweeting through the shitstorm of 2020 now.
I gotta check back with NYC Gweedo voice because I'm sure he doesn't wear a mask.
NYC Gweedo Voice's Twitter account probably doesn't have like the mask avatar on it. Let's see. Okay, so his most recent tweet was July 18th. And it said, yeah, an Indian dating show. What's that called? Connecting the dots?
Oh my god, this is the best. This is the takeaway from the episode for me, is that this is back. I'm so happy.
Yo, yeah, so these protesters keep saying Black Lives Matter, but not a single one of them is talking about stuff like this, eh?
All right, we need to jet off this before we just quote NYC Gweedo voice for the rest of the episode.
Seriously.
We will do that.
Wait, hold on. Can I give you one more Gweedo voice tweet?
One more.
Bringing own bib to restaurants. Hey, I'm not wearing a fucking mask.
You know that's actually been a discussion that somebody has had, by the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring my own bib to the restaurant.
Like Red Lobster, there's a lot of confusion right now, but
a whole Olive Garden, even more confusion.
When you're here, you're not family anymore.
So I guess we'll do our top of the top now, because I feel like we've covered there's so much stuff we haven't covered.
See if there's anything else I wanted to comment on, but then yeah, we can do the top of the top, because the Preservation album is really good. It's Preservation, you may remember, has done a lot of production for Mos Def. The feature list on this is absolutely ridiculous. Just to read off the first two, the audience probably wouldn't know very well. I didn't when I was going into it, but then you have, in order, Tree, Quelle Chris, Makami, Nicholas F., Navy Blue, Billy Woods, Rock Marciano, Makami and Your Old Drew, Ka, AG, and then someone else I don't know, who doesn't even have an RYM page. But it's Preservation doing the sort of thing that Oh No used to do and Madlib, not so much Madlib, but really Oh No would do when he did like the Ethiopium and Infected Gadget and Experiment, where he would take a regional sound and just base all of his beats around that regional sound. These are all Eastern, like specific Eastern. I forget where exactly he pulled them all from. They're all from the same sort of regional sample source, and it knocks. The first two tracks aren't great, but then it really picks up. So yeah, if you're a fan of any of the rappers on this, it only has 283 ratings on RYM, which is actually not horrible, but considering the feature list on this, it should probably have a lot more. Ka never does features, and this
Ever.
is a 5-minute Ka song that is just as good as anything he's ever done. So if you haven't heard that, I highly recommend it. More Mother put out a free jazz album that is really cool. More Mother featured on the Arm & Hammer album, and it's been gathering a lot of buzz, also out of the Philly area. So definitely something to check for if you're into her whole thing. It's probably on the farther left side of that. I have not heard the Pink Sifu Negro album, but it's gotten a lot of great fucking buzz.
It's really good. Really, really good.
More Mothers on that as well. I've been meaning to get around to it. It came out before all of the quote-unquote unrest happened. But
Yeah.
I think clearly speaks to it. Look at the fucking cover art and the track titles and the genre tags and all of that. So I really need to get around to this album. I love Pink Sifu. Ensley is one of my favorite albums of the past couple of years. This seems like it's very far off from Ensley, but definitely want to get to that. Just going to go through the second page real quick, and then we'll get to our top stuff in case there's anything I want to comment on. I thought Beach Bunny was Beach House. They're not the same thing. Fuck Grimes. The Knowledge album is very good. Knowledge actually has put out 3 projects this year. 4, I believe. All of them really cool. Although 2 were re-releases, I believe, of like bonus shit that he's done. 10,000 Proof and 3. He did 10,000 Proof and something that was like a video game themed EP.
Mm-hmm.
1 he gave away free. They're all really good. 1988 is his proper follow-up to Hood Dreams on Stone's Throw, and he's probably one of the few, if not only, really good artists left on Stone's Throw. I think I talked about this in our previous listing episode. It's really fucking good. Knowledge is super consistent. It's just as good as Hood Dreams, regardless of what you heard. It's a little more, again, I feel like the way the samples play out on this is really creative. I feel like they're more fully fleshed out songs than snippets that he's done in the past, and his snippets were already great. So, metal. Conway album's very good. Thundercat album is not my favorite Thundercat album, but it's still good.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, every Thundercat album's good, so that's kind of how I. That's kind of how I feel.
I mean, cool. Like you got a Ty Dolla $ign and Lil B feature, which is hilarious. I think that the singles were all really good on this. For the Dragon Ball Durag is not my favorite song he's done, but the other singles were really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Black Qualls with Steve Lacy on it is the best. I think Black Qualls is probably a better version of what Childish Gambino was doing on Awaken My Love than Childish Gambino did on Awaken My Love.
Probably, yeah, probably. I'm trying to. I only listened to the album once, to be honest with you, so I'm trying to remember that song. But you're probably
it was a single, right. So I heard it a few more times. I only heard the album itself once, but Black Qualls came out as a single, so I heard that a few times. It's got a really great Steve Lacy lead on it, so that's. And I mean, it's Gambino doing like that Gambino thing. It's certainly more memorable than what I heard. I started his album, I never finished it. Not because it was bad, because I think I got distracted by something else. But that says a lot about the album, too. It didn't command my attention enough to even continue listening to it. So, yeah, it's a Thundercat album that is not nearly as fun to me as Drunk or as significant to me as like some of his other stuff. But he's very solid. I don't think he can make a bad album just with his formula. So,
no, for sure.
The Kaya album, really good. I only listened to it once, but it's really quality. The Owen album is great if you're fucking horribly sad. If your marriage is falling apart, boy, do I have the album for you.
Yeah, it does not seem like it's not a I'm going to put this on and jam to it record. Ugh.
The Owen album does not knock in the whip. The Owen album knocks in your therapist office.
Yeah.
It's really good, though. Like, if you're into the Kinsella style of Midwest emo, it's beautiful. I think it's just as good as American Football LP in its own way. But, boy, do you have to be fucking depressed to listen to this shit. Like, it will drag down your day.
It's been some good emo records this year. The Dogleg record's really good too. I know that's in the top 50 somewhere, I think.
Yeah, it's fairly high up there. I didn't comment on it just because you mentioned it before, but I figured you would comment on it if you wanted to.
Oh
I
yeah,
am
no.
not supposed to have heard. Speaking of emo, I'm not supposed to have heard the Bright Eyes album, but I have in decent like poor quality. It's very good. Won't bore anybody with views on it, but it's about what you'd expect in terms of content and stuff, and it will satisfy the fans. So it's not as good as the Phoebe Bridgers record in terms of who had the better Oblivion record, but still.
Mhm.
And yeah, getting to the end, I don't recognize any of this shit. I did download the Other Lives album because I forgot that they existed until I looked at this list today. The John Zorn album started a really petty fight on the RYM genre boards. The Pat Metheny album is probably good. I haven't listened to it yet. And all right, so let's get to our top shit, like the defining shit thus far of the year for us.
Yeah, and I think I already touched on most of it just on riffing on my top 10, but my number 2 is the Freddie Gibbs record, which I think is also your number 2.
Yes, I wanted to
So,
say it is my number 2, and I
yeah.
can't really like we have touched on it in the past. I still have been listening to it since. I've been struggling with writing a review that does it justice. I continue to stand by my 10 on it. I have not like weakened my praise for it even a little bit. Scotty Beam is maybe my favorite rap song of the year, even over anything on my number 1 actually.
Scotty Beam is some of the most. I mean, I could put that song on any time, any day, any place, any situation. It's one of those, and it's so effortless, man. And like I said, we raved about Freddie in our episode, and he's probably my favorite, if not my favorite rapper out right now, just one of them. And everything he does holds weight. But this is, I agree, it's definitely one of his best projects. I don't think it's his best, but it's definitely one of them, and it is fucking incredible from start to finish. And Scotty Beam, I mean, amazing. Fucking that's something to rap about. Um, Incredible stuff. We talked we've
to take
talked
off
about
something to
the.
rap about. I was listening to something to rap about yesterday, and
Mhm.
I am continuously amazed by the way Tyler delivers his verse. I don't know how carefully he wrote that, but the way he delivers it, it's like he heard the water sound in the beat and decided to just riff on that to the pool thing and just kind of build his verse around that. It feels very organic and off the top of the head, which it clearly isn't because there are clearly carefully written punchlines in his verse, but the way he delivers it feels very spooled off. And there's a Flower Boy feel to it almost, like the rappier songs on Flower Boy.
Mhm.
For a while, it took me a while to consider Flower Boy even a rap album, even though there are rap verses on it, because it feels like it's kind of midway. Igor more so even on the singing side because he does so much singing on it. But just the way he delivers that impresses me so much. The way he calls back to the theme at the pool at the very end is so fucking like. Really, you just have that lineup of just murder fucking like feature songs, like, and the Ross feature is the least of the features, but it's also just like absolute perfect fucking fit.
It's a
Like,
great fit. It's a great verse. The Conway verse is my favorite Conway verse ever. I've
I
lit
don't know if
that.
my favorite Conway verse ever. Like, I think it's hard to pick. Like, honestly, speaking of great shit from this year, the Fire in the Booth Griselda freestyle,
Mm.
which is Conway and Benny pretty much going off on each other, that might be my favorite Conway verse ever. That's up there. And it's hard for me to pick a favorite. That's close though, because that's very like the details about his kid and everything.
Right, and how he plays with the sample, oh, like I gave the streets like all love me, like the way it plays with
Right.
that, like it's so beautiful.
Yeah, the beats really feel like an alive part of the project. I said that Small Pro is my favorite producer of the year. I feel like Alchemist has got to be second, and it's not almost fair to compare them because Small Pro is working in a very, forgive the smaller space, but he
Yeah.
works with his crew, worked like within a very small regional space, whereas Alchemist is afforded way more opportunities to work with all these great rappers, and he makes the most of it. And the Conway album doesn't sound like the Boldy album, doesn't sound like the Freddie album, and they're all incredibly top shelf. I know I kind of glossed over the Boldy album. It's just compared to these, it didn't resonate with me. I can
Mhm.
come back to it, and it's going to be great, I'm sure. Like, it's just Boldy's personality isn't bold enough compared to the other Griselda guys to me. Like, but he's definitely delivers, like, in terms of content, like, and it's just, I'm trying to find the right words for this album because I think we need to stop comparing Freddie albums to Freddie albums.
Yeah, because he's just that great.
Because inevitably it comes back to this isn't as good as the Madlib project, and then you get into the same hole where it's like with Doom, where it's like this isn't as good as Mad Villainy. Does that mean that King Ghidorah has no value? Does that mean that Food has no value? And then we got to the point where it's like anything he put out after a certain point, he's washed. I don't think Born Like This is a washed album. I don't even think Key to the Cuffs is a washed album. And then with Freddie right now, we're getting to the point where it's like everything after Pinata, he's washed to a certain audience. That's so not fucking true.
It's funny because since I think with Bandana and this, his popularity has grown. Like he has been a name in the underground for so long, but he's sort of establishing a name for himself in like mainstream-ish circles. Like, I mean, Scotty Beam had, pretty high placement on like some popular like Spotify rap playlists. Like that doesn't. I mean, I know it's a Ross feature, but still, like Ross isn't like super hot in the streets these days. So I think Freddie has something to do with that. And this is not like an accessible project, but it feels that way just because of how warm and inviting the beats are. A stark contrast from how dark the beats were on other projects Alchemist has done this year, like the Boldy.
Yeah, but he kind of sandwiches it though. It's like the warmness is in the middle. Like the warmest thing is something to rap about for sure. And that's
absolutely.
Like pretty much dead in the middle. And like I would say that Skinny Suge and All Glass and 1985 are probably the hardest beats, and like the hardest they lead off and end the album. Like,
God is Perfect too.
I was gonna say, yeah. So you have the hardest at the beginning and the hardest at the end, and those are Freddie by himself, and the warmer stuff with features in the middle. It's very deliberately.
It is an amazing album. I fucking love this album.
I never get sick of it. I never get sick of the way Freddie raps on this album. I think that just the variety of flows, the shit, like. Honestly, like, who could have predicted? Like, I mean, again, like, I think I forget if I used this line before, but when Freddie says, like, your execution will be televised, the revolution is the genocide, that when he came out with that what he was commenting on, like,
yeah.
But you should have been able to predict that because you're always just a day away from that fucking happening.
Right. And that album came out the day of when all the protests were starting to pop off, like, or a day or two after that. Like, it was really, 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 like, prescient.
And which adds a greater level of everything to Conway's verse, too.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's, like, absolutely... I think it's the pinnacle of his career so far, but I think Fetty is up... Like, the thing is, I think Fetty is super underrated. I think he will live twice as super underrated. Yeah. I think that it's just reductive to keep comparing shit back to Pinata, because it's not all like Pinata is an incredible 10 out of 10 album. It's not. I don't think he's done making defining statements, and I don't think not even needs to work with his Madlib.
Right, not even close. He can work with anybody. He can rap over anything. He's, like I said, he's probably the best rapper out right now for my book, and I would challenge anyone to disagree with that. Like, I really think that he's. I mean, I mean, I hate using. He's not in a class of his own or anything, but he's just like in an elite group of talented artists, and has been one of my favorites for years, and will continue to be.
Yeah, I mean, so we both share the same number 2. Your number 1 is like my number 3, so I suppose and it should be no surprise to anybody who's been listening to this episode. But let's hear how you're feeling now.
Yeah, I mean It's funny, I actually haven't listened to the record in a few weeks, which is the first time since it came out I can say that, because in the initial month and a half after it came out, I played the ever-living shit out of this album. It's instantly became one of my favorite pop records ever. And it has remained and has still held up. I have almost come to the point now where I have come to the point where the run from like I Finally Understand and C 2.0 and Party for You. Yeah, I like that run just as much as like the Forever, Claws, Pink Diamond Run, or the 7 years and Forever back to back, like the freaking the anthems and visions back to back. There's nothing about this that I don't love.
No, I've actually come around to the only part I can say that if I would prune anything would be the first verse on Party for You, but the second verse on Party for You and the bridge and the outro are redeem the fuck out of it. Like,
Oh
the
my
first verse
god,
on Party,
the bridge and the outro. Sorry to cut you off. The bridge and the outro on Party for You are some of those beautiful music you'll hear all year.
You're right. That just like the whole song builds to that, and like the second verse, like the first verse, I'm just like, where's this going? It's not as good as everything else. And then it just the second verse is like, oh, I get it, and then the bridge is like, oh, fuck, and then the outro is just heavenly.
Yeah.
So it just builds and builds. Like the construction on this album is just, yeah. I don't come back to it as a whole piece so much, but I'll sometimes just get a craving to hear certain songs. Like still for my money, the second verse on 7 Years is probably the most perfect music I've heard all year. Forever can give it a run for its money. Visions can give it a run for its money. I still feel like there's no greater moment of everybody's searching for that cathartic quarantine moment, but just ultimately I've got visions in my mind. That's it right there for me. It's just like that's what everybody's like, they're laying there. They're envisioning where they could be, what they want other than this shit. And this album is just that. It's just in search of something other than this shit. It's that passion, it's that longing, and it's that so perfectly articulated.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's not to like about this. Like I seriously, mercifully stopped listening to it on like a daily basis a few weeks ago, but I'm of two minds with it. I could either come back to the whole thing and, oh, I want to listen to Detonate now. Well, fuck, now I have to listen to a fucking Enemy, and oh shit, I have to listen now. I finally understand. Like it's that sort of thing. But at the same time, there's times I'm like, let's just play the whole thing. So I haven't done that recently, but I will for at many points throughout this year. This is going to be my number one by the end of the year. I don't care what gets released. And that's a pretty heavy statement considering all the great music that's been dropped. But I can't really see anything topping this in my book. But it's just that good.
I think that speaks to how good the transitions are. Is that when you listen to one song, it gets to the end, it's like, well, now I have to fucking listen to the other song. That's kind of how I felt about My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. It's like you get to that outro, and it's like, shit, now I got. Like, you can't listen to fucking the end of Power and not want to listen to the fucking, oh, that's the intro to All of the Lights. Now I have to listen to All of the Lights. Like, you can't listen to Detonate and not want to listen to Enemy. And then it's like, then I finally understand's coming up. Of course. Like, it all flows into each other so fucking well that it goes back to the construction and craftsmanship of it all. So, yeah, I don't listen to it every day, but it's still there for me when I need it. It's just like it's both there for a quick hit and a full binge, as it were. Like, and I don't think it's disposable in any way, but it still has that euphoric, like that sort of quick hit euphoric quality that you get out of the best pop music. It works on both levels. Like, that's why I feel like it works on both the deeper lyrical level in the context of where we're at right now, and on just a more superficial, this is great blood pumping music level.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, fuck the rating backlash for it. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? It ain't technical death metal, man.
This thing has a 3.68. Get the fuck out of here. What is going on with the world?
Well, what is going on with the world is commented on very well by my number one album, Arm & Hammer's Shrines, which you could have probably guessed on the fact that we did a whole fucking episode based on it.
Yeah. Amazing album. Like it just missed my top 10. I know I haven't listened to it as much as, obviously you have or Germ has or whatever, but I think it's my favorite of theirs, actually. I think it's the one that I've really
No, go ahead.
I think it's the one that I've really like connected with, which is funny because according to a lot of their fans, it's like one of their more like abrasive ones, or not abrasive, but like one of their more like tougher ones to get into. Because for me, I was kind of into it from the first listen. I listened to it like the hour after it came out. I knew it was gonna be good, but I hadn't even listened to like Rome or Race music until the week before. I loved Paraffin, but I never go back to it. Not its fault, but Billy Woods is an amazing rapper, and not Elucid's great too. But I just didn't get the itch to listen to them. But I think on this album, they really connected for me. I mean, not in the same way as like Today I Wrote Nothing or The Hiding Places did. Like those are, I mean, those are great albums, and Billy Woods is great. But I haven't I never want to throw Billy Woods on, and I always feel bad about that because he's so good. So whenever I do throw him on, I'm like, oh man, this guy's so good. But on this record, like I've listened to this in full, like probably about 4 or 5 times. So it was like
You feel the same way about Billy that I feel about Kendrick now.
Interesting.
Because I never want to throw Kendrick on, but when I do, and Germ's going to have an argument with me about this because I don't think Germ actively might dislike Kendrick at this point. I was like, I really appreciate what the fuck Kendrick does and everything, but it's like I've lost that casual ability to want to casually just throw on a Kendrick Lamar song. I can throw on a Billy Wood song. I fucking throw on shit from Hiding Places casually, which if you listen to that album, probably says more about me. Probably says more about me being fucking weird. Oh yeah, let me listen to this 1 and a half minute song that ends with a sarcastic punchline calling back to Glengarry Glen Ross. Yeah, that's something people just listen to in their spare fucking time. But no, just real quick because I didn't mention these things briefly. I just want to briefly touch on that I meant to, that I just remembered. If the Gorillaz put out a fucking EP or something of all their songs, it would be on here. All the Gorillaz singles have been great. Can't harp on that enough. Damon, What Are You Doing? Put out a fucking album. Yo La Tango just put out an album, and it's the first socially distanced rock album. If you actually look at their Bandcamp, they obeyed all the rules of social distancing and did like a fucking drone and psychedelic rock album. It's really cool. It's only like $5. Go buy it. I did. So yeah, support that shit. So just real quick, want to throw those out there. But back to Arm & Hammer. Yeah, this album, it's funny that you say it's the most inviting and people aren't saying it's the most inviting because if you listen to our episode, I comment on what they talked about on Call Out Culture when they had Arm & Hammer on there, which is that they deliberately try. There are better places in their life, both say, Elucid and Billy, that they made this album than they were on Roman Paraffin. And that they came up with something that deliberately sounded more organic, more optimistic, although they're still, if you listen to the lyrics, not particularly optimistic. But overall, the sounds are more optimistic, especially the way it starts, especially the first single, Charms, with Kaya on it. And if you look at the video, like I talked about this at length, or we did, me and Germ, on the episode, so I don't want to belabor it too much. But it was supposed to be more organic, more. But then they read the reviews, and it was like another industrial rock, industrial hip hop, like desolate masterpiece from the masters of, like, they talked about like a fucking Dalek album or a Jesus Lizard album or some shit. Like, this does not sound like Steve Albini produced it. Like, it still has dark moments, but I stand by what I said, where it's part of a trilogy that is ultimately the optimistic-ish end to it. Although I still see what Germ said in our episode about how it's like they see it as an ending where humanity dies and the earth goes on. I could see that too, but that's also maybe an optimistic ending. We fucking suck.
Yeah.
I kind of want to end the episode right there and say, we fucking suck. We're living off borrowed time. Peace. But
it's a thesis statement for the show.
But yeah, like it is, I feel more inviting. Like I feel like they're trying a little harder. Maybe not trying, but they've just become so comfortable with each other that it's easier for them to come up with songs that are easier for people to engage with.
Yeah, and I think like they've just amassed a fan base over time that is going to different subsets of the fan base are going to expect different things, right? Like that's how it works. Once you achieve a certain level of notoriety, even if it's only underground notoriety, so not everyone's going to be happy with every album you drop, which is unfortunate. I think it's a great record, and I think I need to listen to it more, even though I probably listened to it, like I said, about 4 or 5 times in full. Really, really good. I mean, everything that you guys said in your episode was way better than anything I could have ever come up with. Like, Billy Woods is not my favorite rapper, so it's like, it's not, to me, the work holds a lot of weight, but it doesn't hold as weight for, some people who like you and Germ, who Billy Woods is, you guys hold in extremely, extremely high regard. So it doesn't necessarily hit as hard to me. And also, I just am not necessarily in the mood to listen to Arm & Hammer a lot because it's just not something that we always talk about. Like, you throw on in casual listening, and a lot of what you do in the car and stuff is casual listening. So it's tough for me to throw that on, but at the same time, doesn't mean I don't have a tremendous amount of like respect for it, and it is great. And it's not great in the way where I'm like, well, this is objectively good, but I never listened to it. No, it's great, and I enjoy listening to it. It's just I don't listen to it often.
No, I see what you're saying, and it's weird because I kind of felt that way about the Shrapknel album, and then I started revisiting it more. And the thing about Arm & Hammer is that should be on its face how I take it, because it is that exact definition. It's very intense. It's very pessimistic. Even when it's optimistic, it's still pessimistic subject matter. Like you have the one track we covered where it was like, I forget which one it was. I don't know if it was War Stories or not, but it's like literally a whole track based around fucking CTE. Like... where it's just like what football players got CTE and how the NFL is a modern day slave block. Yeah, let me bump that in the whip. Like that's a real fun fucking song. But,
right. It's a lot of, you listen to it, you're like, holy shit. But I'm not, that's not something that I'm gonna play daily because my daily activities are not conducive to that type of listening.
But I still do play it all the fucking time, which is weird because I can't say that. I say it more about the Shrapknel album, not as much. Like it kind of seeped its way more into my daily listening, but I still kind of had to push it. And like the BLUu album, like I said, it's so long and overwhelming that even like I still kind of like the best songs will. But whereas with the Arm & Hammer projects, race music, not so much. Race music, I feel like they were still feeling each other out. Same thing with Half Measures, the mixtape prior to that. But the other ones, like Furtive Movement, super underrated EP. Jerm and I are going to do a deep dive on that eventually, I promise. And like all the other ones past that, I have just like organically found their way into my rotation. And I don't know if that's just, again, a testament to me being a weird motherfucker who's like, yeah, that is conducive to my everyday life or not, or just the way that they've gotten so good at just taking this difficult subject matter and transforming it into music that I want to hear in my everyday life. I don't know. But in the same way that you can't see anything unseating the Charlie album, I find it very hard to see anything that's going to unseat the Arm & Hammer album. But this has been a weird fucking year. So I would not put anything past anybody else. And the only thing that's sure for this year is that I'm going to listen to a lot of Charles Hamilton albums, and we're going to collect a lot of Chaos Emeralds.
100%, absolutely.
Our intro music is by June Classic off the Billy Woods track "Borrowed Time" off of Today I Wrote Nothing. Our outro music is "Stagnated Pace" by Can Kick off Warp District Volume 1, and we are living off borrowed time. And we will see you next week.
It ain't gonna never stop. 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 It ain't gonna never stop.
Time will tell. Time is yet to be conquered by man. But when the time is right, perhaps the greatest revelation of all time will dawn upon us.